Have you ever stopped to think about what a morning was like before, well, before everything? Before the internet, before 1,000 cable channels, before the way we do things now? Well, today, we're going to do just that. We're stepping back in time to the late 1970s.
And our guide for this trip is author Carlo DeSalvo. What he calls a pretty normal routine is actually this incredible time capsule of an entire era's culture, its technology, and its family life. It's fascinating stuff.
So for any kid back then, that morning routine started in one place, in front of the television. But you have to remember, this was a world with just a handful of channels. The battle for who got to watch what was a very, very big deal.
This slide really shows you the choice that kids had to make. On one side, you've got the calm, kind of educational world of shows like Romper Room and Captain Kangaroo. And on the other, you have the total chaos of syndicated cartoons like Rocky and Bullwinkle. For our guide, the choice was a no-brainer. But before we get to his favorite, that show he skipped, Romper Room, it had a really interesting way of doing business.
This was actually pretty genius. It meant that a show like Romper Room could feel like it was your local show, with a host and kids from your actual town, while still being this huge national brand. For example, the Baltimore version was the original, but it was also sent out to other stations. It's a perfect blend of that national reach with a really local personal feel.
But, as cool as that local model was, it just couldn't compete with the pure anarchic fun of the cartoons. So our author, like pretty much every other kid, was pulled right into the fast-paced, serialized world of Rocky and his buddy Bullwinkle.
And, you can see why it was so irresistible. Rocky and Bullwinkle wasn't just one story. It was basically a variety show in cartoon form. You had the main moose and squirrel adventure, which always ended on a cliffhanger, right? But it was also packed with all these other amazing segments. You had the time-traveling dog and Peabody's Improbable History, the hilarious Fractured Fairy Tales. It was like getting 5 or 6 shows for the price of one.
Now this is the secret sauce of that show. It worked on 2 completely different levels. As a kid, the author just loved the goofy characters and the slapstick. But looking back as an adult, he realized it was just filled with all this satire and dry wit aimed squarely at the grown-ups who are also watching. That layered humor is a huge reason why it's still such a classic.
All right, so let's move out of the family room and head into the heart of any 70s home, the kitchen. Because after the cartoons, it was time for a breakfast that was, you guessed it, a perfect snapshot of the food culture of the time.
Just get a load of this lineup. The kids' choices here are a who's who of sugary legends. Peanut butter Captain Crunch, Cookie Crisp, yep, literally cookies for breakfast. And the adults, they all had their own go-tos, from Dad's Sugar Pops to Grandma's Frosted Flakes. This wasn't just a pantry shelf, it was a shelf full of different personalities. But breakfast wasn't always out of a box. The author's mom often used what was still a pretty newfangled marvel at the time, the microwave. And for her, whipping up some scrambled eggs in the microwave was just normal. It's a great reminder that something that might seem a little weird to us today was once just part of the everyday routine.
Oh man, you can almost smell this slide, can't you? It's such a simple, perfect ritual. That hot toast, the butter melting right in, and then that shaker of pre-mixed cinnamon and sugar. This was classic, quick, and for a whole generation, this was the definition of comfort.
The mother's own routine is another perfect little time capsule. Notice the theme of convenience here. A frozen honey bun, Taster's Choice, instant coffee, both nuked in the microwave. And her news? She'd make the single Sunday paper last the entire week. It's just a world away from the 24/7 news cycle we live in now.
So as the morning started to roll on, a major power shift happened in the family room. The cartoons were over, the kids were off doing other things, and the adults officially took control of the television.
And the programming changed completely. Suddenly, the airwaves were filled with talk shows like the Phil Donahue Show, and really dominating the whole schedule, this huge block of game shows that the author's grandmother watched like it was her job.
And what a lineup it was. The $20,000 Pyramid, Family Feud, The Price is Right. These were the absolute titans of daytime TV. But there's one show on this list, her absolute favorite, that you might recognize by name, but you probably wouldn't recognize the way they played the game.
That's right, we are talking about Wheel of Fortune. But I need you to forget everything you know about the modern version of the show. The game back in the 70s was a whole different beast.
Okay, first off, the host wasn't Pat Sajak. It was a guy named Chuck Woolery. But the biggest, wildest difference, and you can see it right here, was the prize system. You didn't just keep the cash you won. No. Instead, you had to go on a shopping spree for prizes like couches or ceramic dogs that were displayed on a revolving stage. Any cash you had left over went on something called a gift certificate, which you could totally lose if you hit bankrupt later on. And, like it says here, there was no final bonus round for the big winner. It was purely a daytime show on NBC, not the big primetime event it is today.
So, as we start to wrap up this look back, what does it all really mean? What do these little memories of TV and cereal and coffee tell us about that time?
It shows us that a normal routine is really just a collection of artifacts from a specific time and place. The franchise model of Romper Room, the double-layered humor of Rocky and Bullwinkle, the rise of convenience foods, and those bizarre shopping rules on Wheel of Fortune, they all tell a bigger story about the technology, the economy, and the culture of the late 1970s.
And that brings us to one last thought. Decades from now, when someone looks back at our time, what parts of your normal morning are they going to find fascinating? The avocado toast? The podcasts you listen to? The way you scroll through news on your phone? What story will your routine tell about our time?